Hi guys, in today's video we will be implementing a full production level CI/CD workflow with GitOps using ArgoCD. Now this is a full hands-on video, so a small amount of experience is required with Git, Docker and Kubernetes. Although on the way I will be explaining everything. So yeah, and if you don't have any experience with ArgoCD, no issue with that. I will be explaining everything to get you started with ArgoCD. So before we begin, so let me introduce myself. I'm Rishabh. I'm a full stack DevOps engineer. I basically upload videos related to programming, DevOps, AWS cloud. So if you like these type of content, do subscribe. And yeah, so let's get started. So let's first check out the stack or the tools we will be using. Now, the first one is GitHub. Yeah, so the first one is GitHub for hosting our repository. We will be using GitHub for that. And for GitHub, we will be using GitHub Actions for our CI/CD purpose. Now, for like integration, for building the image and deploying the application. So we will be using GitHub Actions for that. Basically, a CI part is done in GitHub Actions. Okay, and for the orchestration, yeah, we will be using Kubernetes, and we'll be using Kubernetes with ArgoCD. So ArgoCD and Kubernetes go basically hand in hand. So ArgoCD basically works with Kubernetes. So yeah, so now let's understand what exactly is ArgoCD. So I, I think there's nothing big to understand in ArgoCD. So basically, ArgoCD, if we talk in like explaining it briefly, ArgoCD is just in case Kubernetes controller. So which basically monitors apps deployed on the cluster. Okay, so as a user, we basically just feed the manifest files, like the one we create for deploying the Kubernetes applications, like different objects, like deployments, replica set, services, config maps, and all that. So we basically feed the manifest file to ArgoCD, and the rest ArgoCD will take care of. So like deploying the application, running it in the way we want. So everything will be done by ArgoCD. We just need to feed the manifest file. So that's it. That's what ArgoCD does only. So it basically uses the Git as a whole. So it basically pulls the manifest from a Git repository and then apply those manifests to the Kubernetes cluster. So that's what ArgoCD only does. So there's not too much to learn. I will be telling you all the basic stuff you need to get started with. Okay, so now before we begin with the video, I would like to mention that all the tools used in this video will be free, and we will be running that on my local system so that you can easily replicate if you are learning it through the video. I will be pointing out the different tools which are used in production applications in the place of what we will be using locally, so that way you can implement the same architecture in a production level application. So the concept will be similar. Okay, so this is the full architecture which we will follow. So let's understand it quickly. So when developer makes some changes, or he or she pushes some code to the repository, a GitHub action will be triggered. Now in GitHub action, we basically define different steps to follow in an hierarchy. Every steps will be dependent on each other. So if one step succeed, only then the other step will begin. Now, generally there are many steps, but for the sake of the video, we will be using only a few just to demonstrate. And we'll be using the first one will be the test one. So in the test stage, we basically write unit test and all kind of tests which we want to implement. So like for example, if you're working with Node, we will add some syntax checking like ESLint and all those tests here. After the test, we'll have another step. Like if the unit test passes, then we will go to the next step, and that test is to build the application in the form of Docker image. Now we are working with the React applications, so we will be building the React app which if you have worked with will when we run npm run build, it will output us with HTML file and bunch of JavaScript. Now we will use Nginx to host that, so we will look at the Docker file later on. So yeah, okay. In this step, so we will basically log into Docker Hub and push the Docker image to Docker Hub, and we will tag it with a unique commit ID, which will get it from the code repo. And after like getting the commit ID and tagging it, we will just push it to the Docker repository. The next step is to update the manifest, which we will feed to ArgoCD. So we will be basically maintaining two repository. The code one, and the second one is the manifest one. So we will basically maintaining two repositories. So ArgoCD will be looking into this one, the manifest repo. So this will basically trigger ArgoCD functionality. So now as ArgoCD follows GitOps pattern of push and pull, we need to maintain another repository. So that's what I just said. This repository will contain all the manifest files. So as in the build step, our image is created with the updated application code. We will use the same tagged image and update the manifest file in the image tag. Now this will be a change. There will be a change in a manifest repo, which will be monitored by ArgoCD, yes, using different types of sync methods, one being the webhook from GitHub. So if that is triggered, ArgoCD will trigger a full update on the, basically calls the Kubernetes API and will tell that there is an update in the application, and then the Kubernetes will update those changes. So that's what ArgoCD will be doing. Now, as soon as the sync completes, ArgoCD will ask the Kubernetes API server to basically update the application according to the manifest. This will result in a new updated application. So the process will be repeated every time when a code is pushed to basically to the repository, and it will trigger the whole GitHub Actions, so the whole pipeline. So this is the overall architecture. Now let's get to the practical part where we will be putting all these pieces together and see how it goes. So let's get started. So when we talk about the code, so this is the code. Let me close all this stuff first. And so we basically be hosting two repositories. So we have these two repositories here, the infra and the React application. The infra one is the one which will be having all the manifest files. So let's check out that one first. So it basically have a simple manifest file of one deployment and one service. So it basically have a so this is the simple deployment where we deploy a single replica of an application named React application. Now the image part, this one is crucial. This image will be updated every time the application changes, like new feature or bug has been completed. So it will change the tag here. So currently it does not have anything, but it will have some tag like this. That is the commit code. So that will be appended here automatically. So we will see that how to achieve that in a minute. The second file is the service file with the type in notepad here. But if we are working with a real application, this can be a load balancer or some ingress service to basically basically have the service running for that particular application. Okay, so basically this repository will be monitored by ArgoCD, and any changes in this repository will result in the change of state of this particular app on the cluster, that being the React application. Okay, now let's go to the next repo. Let me React application. So let's check out the Docker file. So there's nothing more and nothing much written in Docker files. It basically builds an image, and we are using an Nginx to serve that HTML file. So that is only the thing we are doing in the Docker image. Okay, so that's it from the code perspective. Okay, the most important part of the setup is the pipeline or the actions which we will be running. So basically all the stuff which we'll be doing here from here to here, all the stuff. So let's check out that. So inside the repository, we'll need to have a .github folder, which will actually tell GitHub that we are using a workflow here. We are basically adding a pipeline here. So inside that, I have added a YAML file. Yeah, so let's tear down the YAML file line by line. Okay. Now, as soon as the push occurs on the master branch, the pipeline will be initiated. Okay, you can add multiple branches here. You can add a pull request feature or anything like that. You can add it here. So for the sake of this video, we will just go on the push on the master branch. Okay. Now the pipeline have multiple jobs. So let's look on different ones. So the first being the node version. So I'm using node 14 here. So that's the environment which will be running the React application. Okay. Now the next step is to check out the code repository and build the artifact. Although for React application or the Node application, we really don't need this. But if you're working with another languages, you will need this stage to basically build the artifact and store that in a repository. So I've just put it here for the sake of if you are working with another language. Okay. Now the next part is the test part. So here I have just made a dummy test step. So if you want to add some test, you can add it here. Okay. Now the most important stage is the build and the push image stage. So this one, it basically needs build and test stage to be completed. So this one and this one, if these both steps are completed successfully, only then this will run. Okay, so they are dependent on that one. Okay, now let's see what we are doing here. So first of all, we are checking out the code. Okay, and then we are basically logging into Git Docker, and we are using the Docker password and Docker user. These are coming from the secrets which I have defined in the code repository. If you go to the code repository, you can go to settings, and if we go to actions, you can see here that I have defined multiple secrets here. So Docker password, Docker user, and the GitHub token. Okay, the user is the same, the one Docker you are using, and the password will be the token which you can generate from Docker only. And same goes for GitHub tokens. You can generate it from GitHub. So this is done. Now we need to push the changes to GitHub packages as well, which is similar to Docker Hub. So we will basically build the image and push it to this both container registry. Now I'm tagging it here as I told you earlier. We will use the commit ID. So whenever this step is done, the checkout one, any changes come, the commit ID will be there. So from this GitHub object, which is available in the workflow, so we can just get the SHA from here, which is basically a long string. If I can show you, if we go to this one, yeah, let's see, it's commits. So this is the SHA ID. So this is what exactly will be added here with the name. Okay. Now the push part is done. So after this, all the images will be on Docker Hub. Now the next step is for the ArgoCD part. So in this step, we basically update the manifest, which is sitting in another repository. Okay, here we change the repository. You can see we are changing again. You can see we need this step needs that this step is completed successfully. Okay, so we have named it here. Now the steps part, I can see we are checking into another repository. This is the infra repository, which is this one. Okay, and we are using the token to log in, and we are referring the master branch. Now inside this, I'm just doing some git changes like the email, name, and all that stuff. So we can add it in the GitHub secrets only, but I'm hard coding it here. And then I'm using Linux Magic here. So what this will do is it will look for the actor, which is I'm Rishabh, the account ID. And if you go to deployment file, this one, you can see it will look for this pattern, I am Rishabh, and it will basically update everything after this. So it will update the GitOps 01, which is the repository, which is basically the repository which we pushed to Docker Hub, okay, and then the SHA ID, okay. So SHA ID will be automatically be appended here like this, okay. And yeah, so this sed command will do the will basically update the image, and which and it will update the image, and it will refer to the latest image which we just pushed. It will add the changes, and it will basically push the changes, okay. After this change has been pushed, it will basically trigger a event for ArgoCD, and then we will see how we will do that. And as soon as it is done, it will basically run the ArgoCD of synchronization and all the stuff like updating the manifest and updating the application on the Kubernetes cluster. All will be happening after this step. Okay, so now this part is done. Now let's basically go and do the ArgoCD setup. So depending on your platform, you can go to ArgoCD and download it. So I'm currently on Windows, so I've already installed it. So if you follow this step, you can easily install it, and you can get the password using this this command. Okay, now if I can show you, if you get the namespaces here, so you can see it will create an ArgoCD namespace. Okay, now inside that namespace, you can see it has multiple objects that is deployed already. So we have different pods, we have services, we have deployments, we have replica set, we have everything here. So for our purpose, we will be using ArgoCD server. So it is a server which basically is running the UI of the ArgoCD. So let's log into that. So for this, if you are working with a production level, or if your cluster is on any cloud platform like EKS and all that, you will be getting an endpoint, right? If you're working with an external IP, we will just use the IP. Now we are not working with external IP, so we are working locally, so we need to port forward this. So what I will use is I have the command here. So we will basically go access this pod which is running the ArgoCD server, and I will assign the IP. Any IP will work. I will assign something like 4001, okay, in the namespace of ArgoCD. Now as soon as I do that, I can go to my browser and I can just add the port here, and you can see the ArgoCD is running. Now for the password, you need to use this to basically get the password. I already have the password, so I will just put it here. Okay, I'll sign in. Now currently I don't have any application, so this is the UI. So this is the general UI of ArgoCD. So if you don't have any application hosted, you will see this. Now let's start with adding the repository. So the infra repository, which is this one. So let's go to settings, and you can add repositories here. Okay, then connect to repo. Now if you have like SSH connection or HTTPS, you can use it from here. Now for the name, let's add it GitOps infra, and project will be default. Okay, and the repository URL. So let's get the repository URL like this. And for any other key, if you're working with private repository, you can use this SSH private key, but we are not using that, so it's fine till here. Let's connect to it, and as you can see, we are connected successfully to this. Now let's create the application. So we'll go to application part. Now we'll create application. So the application name, I will name it as like GitOps tutorial, and the project name will be default only. Sync policy, I will put it manually currently. Options, I will use auto create namespaces. So we will create another namespace and see, like currently, if you see, we have all these namespaces. We will see if it creates another namespaces. Okay. In the repository URL, I'll use the one which I've added in the settings, and the revision will be head. Okay, and the path will be current directory, which is this one only. And the cluster URL will be default, which is the default is service, which is currently the local host system. Now here, if you have EKS or any other cloud platform running Kubernetes cluster, you can put the URL here where you want to basically deploy your application. Now let's create the namespace. So GitOps tutorial. Okay, everything is fine until after that, and let's create this. As you can see, if I created this, it's currently out of sync. It is not working. So let's sync it and synchronize it and see what it does. Now, as soon as I synchronize it, you can see that it is currently deploying the application, but it is not working. So, okay, we can see how we will fix that. So this is the overall application. So this is the you can monitor everything here, that the services, deployment, and the pods, everything you can monitor here. It will also show you the current sync status, like the current ID, current image, and everything which we have added. Okay, now let's basically run this. Let's just push some changes and see if this works or not. Okay, so in the action file, we'll open the actions. Okay, and I'll go to app.js and I will update something here. So I will add first connect, something like that. Okay, and connect. Okay, and I will post the changes. As soon as I post the changes, you will see action will be triggered here. Okay, now if I open this, it will run the test stages like defined in the action file. Okay, so currently it is running the build stage, and then it will run the test stage, and so on. So build, test, and this. So let's go to Docker Hub and see if my repository is there or not. So currently I don't have that repository, so let's wait till here, and then we can see that. So let's wait a few minutes and see if all the tests are running successfully or not. Okay, now this total time duration it takes is 2 minutes, so that is because we are using GitHub Runner, which is a bit slow and free tier. So let's see if the image is been pushed or not. So if I go up here in the Docker Hub, you can see the image has been pushed, and if you open this, you can see the tag. So this tag 81276. Now if you go to your commit, and you can match it up here like 81276. So this gets appended here. Okay, now if you go to your infrastructure file and if you refresh this, you can see the same has been appended here. Right, now if you go to deployment file, you can see it has been appended here also. Okay, so this works. So every time any changes happen, it will basically update the infrastructure manifest and it will like redeploy everything. But currently if you go to our ArgoCD, it will not trigger the changes because ArgoCD in the configuration is set to look for the changes after every 3 minutes, but we will change that to anytime any push happens here in this one and in the manifest file. So let's try to sync it manually this time. So let's synchronize it and see if it works or not. So the sync is okay and the app is healthy. Let's see. As you can see, the application is running. Now let's go and access this application. So first we will check the namespaces. So as you can see, it's deployed the namespaces, GitOps tutorial. Now let's get into that and see the pod. Now you can see here that we have the pod running and we have the service running and deployments, everything is running. So we have added two replica sets, one replica set which is currently running. Now let's access this application. Okay, now let's just port forward this to the service. So use the same command and we'll just append the port number, the port which is currently running in the container, and the port we want to exit locally, and the namespace will be this one. Now as I click on that, I can go up here, and if I refresh, you can see the first commit, the one which we added. Now let's trigger one second commit and see if this works or not. So let's go again to our code repository, and I'll change just this line, and I'll quickly push it. Now you can see the second change has started. Now we will see if this changes this one to second commit or something like that. So let us wait. Okay, so the second change has been deployed. So check out the commit name. This commit name 7A88, and it will be deployed here. 7888. Now let's see if the changes happen or not. So it won't show it because we need to basically run the put forwarding again. But if you're running an application on the cluster, on a paid service or paid cluster, you don't need to do this step. Now if I do that and I refresh it, oh sorry, I actually need to sync it here because we have yet not added the hooks, so we need to sync the repository again. GitHub application. Now I can see it is deploying another application, another pod. Okay, let's just select this one. It is terminating the older pods. Let's see if it works or not again. Let's refresh it. So you can see it is basically terminated. Now let's go forward it again, and now you can see we are on the second commit. So this works perfectly fine. So this is how the whole architecture works. Okay, now let's add and synchronization. Basically have a hook, so every time we don't need to do the sync and all those stuff. It will basically anytime there's a push in this repository, it will trigger the update. So let's do it. So for that, you need to go to the GitOps infrastructure repository, and in the settings you need to go to webhooks. Okay, let's add another webhook here. Now for the payload URL, now if you are working as I showed you, if you're working with let me show you first. So get svc and ArgoCD. Now if you're working with an Kubernetes cluster that is deployed on a paid service like EKS and all that, you will have an external IP you can access directly from there. But we don't have that, so what we'll do is to access it locally. We will basically use ngrok. So ngrok is a tool which you can use to port forward your local running application using an URL. If we give you an URL, you can use that to basically hit the code or any services running locally. So I'll use that. So to use that, you need to use ngrok, and first of all we need to check the port which is running. That is 4001. Okay, so let's go here, ngrok http 4001. Now as soon as I add it here, you can see we got the forwarding URL. First let me check this is running on 4001 now. I forgot. Yes. Okay, so I'll copy this one and we'll go to adding the webhook, and here we will add the webhook, and you need to add API/webhook like this. The content type will be application JSON. We don't need any secrets, although you can add it for extra security. SSL verification, as we are running it locally, we don't have any SSL verification, so we'll where it is. So we will add it disable. Okay, and it is saying which event you want to trigger the hook. So I will say every event for currently, not just the push event. Sorry. So let's add the webhook. Okay, now if you open this, and if you click on recent deliveries, you can see that the delivery is successful. So it's basically is connected to our local ArgoCD server. Now let's do one changes, and you can see without doing any synchronization, it will update the state of the application. Okay, so what we will do is to go to this infrastructure repository only, and I'll go to the deployment part, and here I will just update it directly from here. Okay, so I'll update this one to like 4 replicas. Okay, and I'll name it as updated replicas. Okay, commit changes, and as soon as I do that, you can see it is currently out of sync, but it is not syncing. Why? Oh yeah, sorry to that, I missed that step. So basically we need to add the syncing step here also. So we need to enable auto sync here. So I'll click on auto sync, and I'll click that, and as you can see, it will start syncing the application. So we have 4 pods running here. So let this be completed. I'll go again, and for the sake of this video, I will just make it 3, and I'll update the replicas again. Set it to 3 replicas, and I'll click on commit changes. Now, as soon as I do that, it will be automatically synced, and it is working. Okay, now let's just do a full change and see if it works or not. So I will running 3 replicas, and for the second commit, I will add it like a third and final commit. I'll save it. As soon as I push the changes, it will run the final commit one, and it will run the overall manifest again. So basically it will deploy two replicas. It will deploy 3 replicas, and it will be having it will update the React application with the third and final commit. So let's wait for this, and then we will okay, so this is done. If you can see, it has already been synced with 3 replicas and all those stuff, and it is getting synced. Let's wait. This is the third and final commit. So this is how you do deployment of a Kubernetes application using ArgoCD and GitOps Pattern. So I hope you liked the video. I know this video is quite big, but if you enjoyed it and if you like this type of content, you can subscribe my channel, and yeah, you can also follow me on LinkedIn. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll connect soon again.